the Finance Committee for the City of Franklin to order. First order of business, I think, is a roll call. Danielle?
Sure. Alderman Piccarelli.
Here.
Alderwoman Day. Here. Alderman Craig.
Here.
Dennis Sheehy.
Here.
John Howard.
Here.
Mayor Kresovic.
Here.
Mohammed Alman is absent, and the Director of Administration is absent.
All right. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First order of business, item number 2 is the citizens' comment period. Seeing that we're not having any visitors with us, we have to close the citizens' comment period. Move on to item number 3, which is approval of minutes for the March 25, 2025 Finance Committee meeting. Those are attached in your packets. Had a chance to look at them.
Ask the next meeting, even though it was canceled, do you list it like that because it was April
Page 2.
on the back of the minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I don't know how that works.
Okay.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
I can double check.
We have a motion to approve the March 2025 Finance Committee meeting minutes.
John.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? March 25, 2025 meeting minutes. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Yeah, so we did not have meetings both in April and, or I'm sorry, April and okay, item number 4. Danielle, I think will talk with us a little bit about the credit card / purchasing card program. City Franklin been in effect for a number of years. Go ahead.
So we've had this in place since June of 2015. I know that Paul has brought a couple of recommended changes or updates to the policy in the past. However, there's been nothing that's moved forward. I wanted to provide a sample resolution of some recommended changes from myself in the finance department, as well as a couple other departments that I've communicated with. Mostly this comes down to times are changing, departments are needing more money to purchase supplies and items for their budget. It has come to my attention that a few department heads are wanting to increase their limits due to the amount of spending that they're doing. So I wanted to just provide a brief analysis of the policy as it states now, a few recommended changes, and then any further discussion around the changes that I have recommended. Right now, the credit card program offers an annual rebate of 1%. We receive a quarterly payment from U.S. Bank, and I put the amounts there that we have received going back to 2016. So as you can see, the low credit card limits that we have at $3,500 per employee has just not generated a lot of benefit and rebate that would really substantially hold this policy to a point where we're receiving enough rebate back. The other reason that I wanted to discuss possibly either increasing the limits and or utilization of the credit cards more is because of the rate increase in postage. The amount of checks that we send out on an annual basis is substantial. And seeing that postage has gone up 23 cents since 2021 just takes into effect, the fact that if we have other methods of payment, whether it's credit card or ACH, it could potentially save us from postage. I will say we're in May and we have already maxed out our postage budget and they're looking for more already. So you could just see that with that change in July, we're going to have a bigger issue if we don't do something with our credit card policy and or implementing an ACH policy.
I was gonna say, so we do not do ACH today?
We do, but we don't have a policy for it, and it's always been frowned upon in the finance department due to risk and just not knowing the vendors and just a bunch of other prior administrative decisions. But trust me, that is something that I'm trying to move forward with, as well as expanding the early release vendors that will allow us to make payments quicker. But yes, that's on my list. Moving forward with a ACH policy that will eliminate a lot of this
I was
headache.
gonna say, that's a huge savings.
Yep.
A lot of companies do not. I mean, checks are usually like the last resort.
So I think on the back, if you have any questions on the policy as it states now, otherwise we can just move to the recommendations that Finance Department and I have discussed.
I just had a quick question. You'd mentioned there's a possibility of risk of misuse or fraud. In order to curb any questions, like in the future, back, would it be possible to ask whoever is just to provide a detailed solution?
Yeah, so right now, I mean, above and beyond the fact that they're providing receipts and
Right, but the receipts don't always tell you what it's for.
correct, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so typically on the receipts, we do ask that you write the account number that you want it coded to, because our accounts payable clerk is the one that actually enters in everything. Department heads don't. They provide her all of the documentation, all the receipts, what general ledger account number it goes to, typically some sort of description so that she can enter that in, and then she enters that all together under one. Welcome. But yes, I can just make sure that we
Have we
Provide
had any
detailed
fraud
descriptions.
situations in the past?
Not that I'm aware of. We have had issues where, well, I should say yes. So department heads have had their cards either stolen, their account information stolen, or lost, and they have had to receive new cards.
Lost any because of it?
No, we have always gotten refunds since I've been here and recognized. Yes. We haven't had any issue with that.
Are we following the statewide program? 'Cause I know US Bank was putting this in place, I think, we're making it available as a statewide program.
That is the 1% annual rebates in the statewide program.
Okay.
That's what that is.
So, talking to US Bank directly and asking for an increase in that may not be
I can reach out, certainly.
the worst they can tell you. Is
No, right?
Or what the tier is to get to it.
Yeah.
Because they're spending.
I mean, they're trying to push volume, and they're probably going to look at this and say, not getting. And we have 10,000 in the card member limits in the policy, but we're not using those, Daniel?
No, it's been set at $3,500 prior to myself. But I do see that it's the maximum limit is 10,000 per policy holder or card holder.
Per
But-
card holder.
But 3,500 has been set, except there is one card in the police department that is set at 5,000. And departments have asked for, one-time increases based on purchases, particularly fire or health. Otherwise, I haven't. Looking at spending, I did do some research prior to this meeting, and looking at spending, I mean, I can have it here. 2024 and 2025, you're looking at less than $2,000 per employee that really uses the card. And I'm not sure if that's due to knowing the limit is $3,500 or just continuing to use the checks and invoicing procedures. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so to go back to Mr. Howard's point, which kind of goes with yours, the goal because when you talk about fraud, we had it at the county level in Milwaukee County where people were chaining. So to avoid going in front of approval boards and approval positions, they were chaining. And, you know, there's problems with that. So as much as, and I'm the opposite where I don't want them using their credit cards. I want them only using them in cases of emergencies because I want everything to be a structured purchase as much as you can. So I just signed off on the credit cards because I get them all and I sign off and I make sure, I mean, I'm just looking at what, and to your point, what's on there, and it's an explanation. Do I know? Yes or no? I don't know, but I'm trusting, but it's a small amount. I mean, I don't remember when I signed off on one over $1,000. They're all in that $35 to a few hundred, and that's what you want, because Milwaukee County had a number of fraudulent things where in the sheriff's department, one woman who was third in command of the agency, and I won't say her name, but she was chaining to avoid going through the proper processes of that $5,000. It was like $2,500. You know, she ended up, it was just weird, not good practice. And I just think that as long as we're keep doing this, now I was what we call P card, purchaser card. So I had one of the highest in the county because if I needed for emergency purchases, I could do it. But other than that, I never used it, nor wanted to use it. Hi. Oh. So anyway, so long and short, that's my 2 cents on that. So I think right now what's going on is very good as far as, you know, the department heads are following proper purchasing policies that are set forth. I think they're used at a minimum, and I think that's a great way to keep it under control.
And to your point, I wrote this down after talking with the finance department that the original purpose, and directly in the resolution it states they were created for incidental purchases. And it just seems that that may not be the case anymore. It's kind of expanded into using it for more than just incidentals. It's consistent spending. So trying to come up with some sort of solution that either we take that part out of there and allow employees to use this on a wider base, and or implement some of the recommendations in here that may limit the scope of them using.
Well, I just think back to when Paul brought this forward. The high cost of issuing a check for these small dollar amounts is ridiculous. That makes no sense whatsoever. We had opportunities to even buy cars, I think, police department through Ford or whatever purchase program, make the transactions easier. That's why that one large account was created. Nobody's used other than I think your position and director of administration. But the reality is this is where expenditures of this variety and size are going in. I just read a study on check use. I mean, it's down substantially, and it'll continue. The highest two uses are for nonprofit donation, and what was the second one? I mean, the federal government will soon be eliminating. You will not receive a payment via a paper check. That's coming soon. And they're obviously not fraud, but preventing fraud. Because once they get their information, Social Security number, do the check, who you are, bank account information that's got to be verified, send it to the bank. That's where they want. They don't want the stuff in the mail subject to somebody's husband or spouse or child or what, negotiating any of this stuff. So it's just what's happening in the payment industry. My 2 cents on this is that if 3,500 is a limit that the department head's saying is inadequate, and we've already approved 10,000, moving it up to some dollar amount seems to make sense. I don't know that we want 100 or 200 cards to every city employee, but to the point that these purchases are being done are repetitious in some cases, maybe many cases. I think it makes a lot of sense to use this. But on the backside, I think it has to be controlled. I'm not sure what we're doing, with that detail now. Ending up on your desk for approval, I'm not sure makes a lot of sense personally for you as the mayor.
Oh, get this. And Danielle will say something. I don't mean to jump you here, John. But we have checks that are 3-party signatures for less than $1. Put me on record, less than $1. It's ridiculous. I'm like, are you kidding me? I think I signed a check for 17 cents and I took a picture of it when I first got elected. I'm like, are you kidding me? And that's how ridiculous and archaic some of the stuff that goes on here, and it's tough to change. It's very tough to change. And I sign probably 100, 150 checks a week. I'm Sherman T. Potter from MASH. Remember that? And it was. I figured he'd like that one. These other guys are like MASH. But that's what this is. There's a ton of checks, and I sign them on a daily. And you'll tell me it's 3-party. Myself, the clerk, and sometimes you.
I'm always.
And they're ridiculous, under $1. Yeah. So to his point, it's mind-boggling.
Like I said, over 500 checks at least just a month.
Well,
Go ahead.
so what I was gonna say is that I guess the way I look at this is, one, I think we gotta definitely move electronic, right? There's no question about it. The second part of this is the credit card purchase is, if you look at it from an approval standpoint, you made the purchase and then you're trying to get reimbursed, so to speak, right? You're given the documentation. Whereas like a PO process with an ACH, getting up front, the approval, the PO gets cut, payment, the purchase gets made, and then the ACH happens. I think that's a stronger control. So I get that we need to do something. We might need to do something here, and there might be a bridge that we have to do until we get to the ACH policy. But I really think anything that's like repetitive or like larger and things like that, I'd like to go down that route and use this really just for, more of the incidental and the and situations where you don't have any. Sometimes you get into situations, it's less now, but where you don't have a PO option. They have no way to handle a PO, and you have to do it through more of a credit card transaction or whatever, bank transaction. But I would like, my preference would be to go down that route because I think it's a stronger control.
I agree. And to kind of piggyback off of that, 2 points I wanted to make. One is the mayor's point about the checks. We implemented last year the property tax refund policy, where we're not doing any refunds under $8 because that's how much it costs with labor to cut a check. So to continue to cut these checks for less than $8, there are going to be instances where it's going to happen. However, if all these credit card purchases are less than $8, then it just makes more sense to allow them to use their credit card to make the purchase. I do like the fact that we do only have 21 active cardholders. It's typically all department heads. I did note the only people that have more is Health has 3 and Police has 4, I believe.
What is the most common purchase or purchases that they're doing?
Is it Amazon? Part of me thinks.
I wish I would have had that answer, to be honest with you. I will say a lot is Amazon, yes.
Set up POs.
Yeah. Which some departments do. Some departments don't, though, right? Some departments that don't have credit cards do the PO system. Ones that do have the credit cards will just pay for it right there because we can do them tax exempt and just make the payment. I brought these just to...
Is this from U.S. Bank? Because they will give you an analysis of your card program by employee, by cardholder, by date, by transaction, by...
I get a monthly statement, but this is just what the accounts payable clerk created for me. But this was more to show the amount of sales tax that employees are charging, and that's why one of the recommendations is trying to come up with a solution on how to mitigate some of that.
Right, sure.
But you can see, I mean, our largest departments that use the cards are police, fire, and health. And so, like I said, coming up with some sort of solution will be nice. But piggybacking off of the large amount of card users kind of goes hand in hand with some of the options where there has become, and I'm going to consider it an issue with making non-sales tax exempt purchases. And I think a lot of it has to do with maybe running low on budgets and needing to run to the store and get something quickly instead of waiting until you can cut a check for 2 weeks. It could be just lack of understanding. It could be vendors not allowing tax exempt certificates. We have had that issue. And instead of going the route of choosing a different vendor, the department heads or purchaser just
So you had
continues.
vendors that would reject that for tax
That's
exempt?
the health department. They've
Yeah.
had
That's terrible.
some.
There's quite a few actually
Yeah.
That won't take our certificate and
Yeah.
not charge us, and still charge us tax?
And
Yeah.
that, I could say that's online vendors, but like I said, you have departments that will run to the store for something. I was at my conference and I forgot my mouse at home. And I am one of those people that need a mouse when I'm working on my laptop. And so I went to Walmart and I made the $9 purchase for a portable mouse, but obviously you can't just walk in with a sales tax exempt form at Walmart and they don't charge you. So there are those incidental situations where it's going to happen, but we recognize some issues that, I recognize some issues that I have reached out and talked with.
Is it on the
department
card?
heads. We can see.
So like when you have your
Each-
card, it's your ID number, so
No, each
the vendor
statement.
should. Well, no, I'm saying, I mean, you can have it on the card, I mean,
The tax number,
Yeah.
that number.
right.
I don't remember, do our
I don't know
cards
if
have
that
that
can-
on it? I don't
No.
remember.
Because I've had it at two different places, the
Yeah.
county and Watchford, and
So the U.S. Bank physical purchasing card will have the tax exempt number on it.
right. So the
Yeah.
credit card I would be using, and I'll have it on there, so you can say, "Here's my," and they would write it
Sometimes
down.
you just have to ask for it too, like, here's where I could see it happening, like, I have some sort of, meeting, and I want to pick up, donuts and juice or something, so I run to Pick and Save. So I need to get back really quick, so I'm going to do self-checkout line, and I'm going to check out whatever.
That's never gonna happen, right?
And I picked a bad example because I know food isn't taxed, but let's say I needed a box of pens as well. But if I would have gone through the regular line, I'm fairly certain you can ask them and they would do it. But then it's like it says, it might be an education thing, it might be a convenience thing. I think, if you're out of state, generally out of state doesn't allow you, so like conferences and whatnot, that's when you kind of run into a problem sometimes. But where I've seen it, when I've been with the health department here in Tosa, is when people are just doing something quick, and they're just not thinking because they're trying to do it quick, and they go through the self-checkout line, and it's just...
When I think of government, because I get this with the university when I drive a little bit, and we're all over a lot of states, and most of their stuff is food purchase, and they usually have it pre-set up with the vendor. So sometimes it's just a matter of, you can do that, but it's system and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a one-time you learn and then done. But I think municipal government, I'm not sure that wouldn't qualify over state lines as well.
Yeah, it's like how much you want to push the issue,
Right.
Like if you're not a confrontational person and they say, we don't do it, do you keep pushing even though you know they do? I don't know. I guess it depends on the staff member,
Right.
But
And I'll tell you two quick examples from the health department today. One employee said that they went to a conference and overheard the village of Greendale having a full-blown argument with the waitress because she was trying to use her credit card to pay for their dinner or her dinner, and the waitress just demanded that she couldn't take the tax off of her bill. And apparently the Village of Greendale has a policy that, I mean, it's zero. You don't use your card if there's going to be sales tax. And
I like it.
she just kept saying that well, I guess I'm just going to get in trouble then. You know, like she was all upset that she knew she was going to get in trouble going back. Sometimes, do you deal with the argument? And or one of the health employees said that she left Walmart crying because she was trying to do a, tax exempt purchase, and they were just completely treating her like garbage.
Yeah, but
and
see,
would not do it.
Walmart doesn't make any sense to me because you can there's one City of Franklin, there's one tax ID number, and there's one Walmart corporate wide. You put it in once and you're done.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it was like this, like you said,
So
it's
that's
just
the
person
education.
help.
I mean, you could
Yeah.
set it up at Walmart.
So that was the conversation with the health department, was trying to, from the finance department, trying to gather a list of, mostly used vendors and reaching out, like Walmart. I believe the health department got it set up at Target where they can either purchase online or go to the store and now do exempt purchases. I know we can with Amazon, but doing some of those larger, global franchise or corporate offices that will allow us to do that, whether it's we walk in with a, City of Franklin ID card and just say, hey, like, we work for the City of Franklin, please don't charge us tax or
Well,
whatever.
it should be set up, just
But-
like you said, we should be set up at Menards.
We
All
are.
this stuff should all be done, so there's no, like, my first day on the job stuff. What do I do? What's my name? No, we're all good here.
And then the other part, though, that as I read through this, Danielle, is kind of what happens on the backside. As was already stated, they're making these purchases without pre-approval, if you will.
Correct.
But what kind of review is being done? And if you see the sales tax always coming from the same individual at the same department, obviously, they're not educated on how this to work.
For example, Ricketts. You have issues with him because he's always going to conferences and all sorts of things. His area is very diverse with what he's doing is he's planning stuff and paying for stuff at different events and Polish Community Center. I mean, he's doing all that and setting everything up and paying in advance for all of us to attend different things that we're at, so I'm just wondering if.
No, I can say that I said I wouldn't call any specific departments out. All of 2024, he had less than $2 of sales tax.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, right. There is one department that I have had a conversation with and have had a couple of conversations with, and we have continued to move forward in a progressive manner that, just the reminders of using your tax exempt form. If they don't allow it, don't use the vendor unless absolutely necessary. And, please at least let the finance department know prior or get some sort of approval. And that department has definitely been doing better. And the way that we catch that again is each statement tells us the purchase, the sales tax, whether it'll give us an amount or it'll say zero. And there was one case that we noticed a large amount that actually they are working with the vendor who is, I believe, going to refund us quite a bit of sales tax money.
Good.
And that was to them just an honest, didn't know, just kept doing it like it was just like a monthly reoccurring thing, and
Sure.
that's just what happened. But
The other way I think to handle this is the department heads are signing off on these before they come to you. It should be, that's just part of the routine. Not only are you giving us the expense category and what it is, but if it's if there's sales tax charged, you better have an explanation as to why.
and that is part of
I agree.
And
we
then,
can move forward with that
and you
recommendation.
go back
as
to
well.
these, the same thing with these receipts, the stuff with 2 or 3 times and whatever. To me, that's a bunch of BS. This is the policy. You want to use the card. This is is it. If you don't, fine. You're the director. You call up U.S. Bank and you say, pull Dennis's card. Bingo. Done.
I understand that, and I knew.
That's the way I do
We're
it.
all pretty
I
passionate
would-
about that, right?
Understandably, and I think that's why, not that I feel I can't make that decision on my own, but the policy basically says, if you are not adhering, right, but what does that mean to me? If I miss one receipt, are you going to immediately pull my card because I accidentally forgot? Now, if I notice something, what's habitual? Is it 1, 2, 3 a month? It's so hard to determine that I said if I don't put something in here to hold people accountable, it's hard for me to say, well, she missed 3 in the last year, but he only missed 1. and
There
he
has to
pulled
be an
his card."
explanation as to why. And they can explain or not explain, but to say they forgot, if you're a department head and you're forgetting that, then maybe you shouldn't be a department head. Because that's really simple.
Yeah.
And I know Dennis is on board with it, John K. Howard's on board with it. I mean,
We're all on board with it.
well, I'm just saying, but it's to the point, it's like
do it.
if you're getting 6+ figures a month to work for the city of Franklin, you got to make sure your crap is together. That's one of those little things that you need to be aware of.
And I feel as from my chair, I mean, I've sent out enough reminder emails and
Oh, sure you did.
that kind of just getting to the point where it's either I'm just pulling the cards or we're putting something in here that says this is all you get and then you don't get your card anymore.
Is there a way that you can get, if we know that there's already an approved list of, like the mayor said, you know, Menards, Home Depot, Target, Walmart, is there a way that you could put like a local list together that we know is already doing this, that you can send out to the department heads so they know, like, okay, I need to run and get something quick. Walmart was giving us trouble, but Target doesn't, so I'll go there. Or, you know, something like that. Just so if it's something they have to do fast, or if it's somebody who's a little bit afraid of confrontation, they know that I can go to this place and there's not an issue, kind of thing.
So
Because I feel like that is where, I think that's where most of it comes in, is like the confrontation part and people not wanting to.
Or laziness. It's like, no, here's your number. Handle this.
our BSNA system doesn't, it allows us to put if a vendor is a 1099 vendor, it doesn't, maybe we could put a note somewhere. I can try and look into it and see if there's an area where we can put that, yes, they are aware that we are tax exempt. They have our tax exempt information. And then obviously reach out to just departments and ask them who they know of that they use that they know is tax exempt.
Yeah, I don't want to make it an onerous process for anybody. I just, in my brain, I'm like, well, if there's, you know, a quick down and dirty list that you know of off the top of your head, that you can just be like, hey, X, Y, and Z, we know that we're all good there. Try to do your purchasing, you know, from those vendors if
And the health
possible.
department and I actually
Yeah.
were just talking about this today when we were talking about some of it.
Especially you being a former department head. I mean, you could probably break down the same 90% of your vendors you're using, and if you
Yeah.
are going to a new vendor, you would just do what you just said. You make sure to get the information and.
Comment, go ahead.
On and off since the 90s, I've made nonprofit purchases, and I've never run into a situation where the vendor has told me. It just is a matter of talking to people. So I'm a little confused about that. This is not going to go over well. I'm just going to share that maybe some entities, or some of them, do. If you purchase and pay a sales tax, it comes out of you. They don't reimburse.
Say that again. I might like this.
So, like, if I go to wherever and I make a purchase and I'm charged sales tax,
You go to Andy's Ace Hardware. You make a purchase. Now what happens?
and I didn't give them the tax paper, so I got charged.
Okay.
When I go to hand in the receipt, they'll reimburse everything except the sales tax.
T&E after the fact.
Yeah, so that would be
Purchasing card program.
offside of the credit card though. That would be your own purchase, right?
But if there was a departmental credit card, then somebody would make a phone call and say, hey, can you reverse the sales tax? If that didn't happen, then it came out of the heads
Even if the head didn't make the purchase.
or whomever.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's literally the buck stops here. I mean, that's talk about accountability. That's accountability. I mean, I don't know what we're talking with numbers wise, but if I'm a department head and you've got a card, that's it. I mean, unless I mean, that's a great idea.
Well, and the biggest thing that I've shared and mentioned in my latest email concerning this issue was, you know, ultimately, if you look at the reverse, granted, it's only, I don't want to say only, but, you know, $1,200 in 2024 and like maybe $1,200 already in 2025.
The sales tax piece, you're saying?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
$1,200 in 2024 and $1,200 so far.
Well,
Through
that's not
May.
good. That's going the wrong way.
Correct.
Right.
But I'm saying, every time you get charged sales tax, whether it's for whatever reason you were charged it, that's additional money coming out of your budget that is no longer used for
Which,
Agreed.
other
which is why I
supplies.
kind of like the sanction, because usually it's a small amount, because these are smaller purchases. If it's $1 or $2, it's not going to typically break an individual's budget for that month, but it's enough that it sticks in their head of, yeah, I don't want that to happen again.
100%.
So I didn't put any recommendations on the sales tax. I don't think. Oh yeah, I did. Sorry, number 2. Limit the number of instances. Again, I don't think it's substantial. There's a couple of times that it's been a substantial amount, and there have been some justification for that, some not. And again, I've reached out and had conversations with those department heads. But to piggyback off the sales tax piece, in talking with Health today, and Courtney, I was hoping that maybe you could help this piece. The charges that are being made sometimes they're being made without the mayor approval for the policy, and therefore grant reasons. And so the funding is being provided from the grant. So if the grant is going to provide the funding with the sales tax included, what's the issue?
2 things in there. When you say without the mayor's approval, because it's over a particular dollar amount, or
No.
because it's one of these items back here that requires
Correct.
the approval?
So we'll just talk about.
Okay, I see. I see one right off the gate.
Yeah.
So I would say I don't know for certain that sales tax is an allowable expense on the grant. It would depend on the grant itself. So that may or may not be true.
I mean,
I've
letter
always-
C has been a habitual issue.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
a concern that I think we need to somehow, after talking with Health today, that there needs to be some sort of recommended change to at least letter C.
Yeah, I think that one's a big one for a couple of the programs that at least were going on when I was here. I'm assuming they're still similar. I know problems I've run into in the past with gift cards is that you would buy them in bulk, and then sometimes they would lose monetary value, or there would be penalties on them, and so they weren't worth. So I really shied away from going that route, if possible, just because there's a lot of unknowns on the other side. And my understanding was because of the type of purchase it was, that was always something you wanted to run up the flagpole before doing it.
For buying gift cards?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at the problem at the airport. Number 2 got hooked in a scam and bought all these gift
Yeah.
cards and that's a big, be careful.
Well, the health department spends a significant amount of money annually on gift cards, and they were very concerned about this coming forward tonight because they don't want to get in trouble. But I know that they haven't obviously gotten mayor permission on a spent every month basis, but they said that they do spend a significant amount. They use them for quite a bit of programming, and as their programming has increased in their grants, the amount of grants has increased. The amount of gift cards that they've used to incentivize has grown as well.
But the grant is coming from, that's a gift, that's a funding source.
Yeah.
Purchase is being made by the city,
Correct.
right? There's 2 different transactions.
Correct. So I think, I understand what they're saying, that it's an allowable expense under the grant, but the city purchasing would still trump what's an allowable expense on the grant. What that means is, to me, what that means is that I have to follow this, and if I get approval or what I'm doing falls under this purchasing, then I look at the grant, and if that's allowable expense in the grant, then I can make it. Not the grant says this is allowable, so I can just do it and circumvent this. That-
I think that may be what's happening right
Yeah, that should not be what's happening. It should be the
now.
other
Other
way.
way around.
If then, a sort
Yes,
of transaction.
yes. If this, then go there. Yes.
And part of that probably, Danielle, is this change of personnel over time
Mhm.
and education in terms of what's allowable in the program, what isn't. And is everybody going to like everything all the time? But
And I think too, what happened recently, at least with health, is that there was a substantial influx of money that has historically never been there. So as those deadlines roll up to the end, it's kind of like, how do we spend this down? And that's just a down and dirty, easy way to do it. So I
But
think
it's not the right way.
I think you'll see less of that going forward now that some of those bigger things are ending. There's just not as much money that's going to be there to do things. So hopefully that will also lessen the occurrences as well moving forward.
Well, they were looking for hopefully some sort of recommendation from the finance committee on how we can maybe change that they don't have to go through the mayor every single time they want to make a gift card purchase.
Oh, but they're buying them in bulk,
I believe so.
so it's a one-time,
Sometimes, yeah.
a one-time approval. And
I would argue that it's not like an immediate or a reactionary purchase, because the programs are planned pretty well in advance, and a lot of them are lather, rinse, repeat that happen every year. So you should kind of know out of the gate that we're doing these programs, and typically we use gift cards as an incentive or whatever, so we think we'll need X number for this amount of money. I mean, I don't think that you're going to really come up with instances where you need to buy them on the fly.
Right now.
Yeah, I would say no.
So
And it-
how do you feel about, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, and if you thought you needed, I don't know, I'll just use numbers, $500 worth, right? And it turns out you only need 2, well, no big deal. You got the approval for 5, doesn't mean you have to spend the 5. So, if you know you gotta get approval for a certain thing and you're kind of like, well, it could be in a range or whatever, just be clear on that and
not
then
to
you get your
exceed
approval.
typically
Yeah.
is the way you want that.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
So then what is
So
the,
I would leave it in here.
then what is the thought process on adding to number 6 that they can receive, if they want to do anything A through potentially O, adding that if the mayor is not available, they can seek approval from the director of administration or the director of finance.
How immediate is the notice? You know what I mean? To me, that seems more like a lack of planning. From what I'm hearing, these are not last minute expenses.
The
So
mayor,
another one
is part-
Some recommended changes.
I just look at this and the mayor being a part-time position, it seems like it makes no sense. We're talking small type, smaller type purchase. I mean, if you're the head admin on the card program, you should have the authority to put up or down. And if it's something you don't think's passed the smell test, then you say, no, we're not going to do this today until I get further clarification or whatever. But I mean, somebody who's a part-time position and the employee base is trying to run their business 24/7 or 5 days a week, and they don't have somebody on that seems to be just overcomers.
Which is why I felt adding that in there was,
For the dollar level.
Well, I think adding then the DOA or the DOA.
And it could be, so the emergency time could be, let's say you have something in the IT space and you need something and it's a purchase of like something fails and you need to buy it because it's something critical. That would be a situation where you may need that quickly, right? Most of the stuff can be planned, but if you had something like
okay, so I'm hearing that adding, I have it under number 4.
Wish the
Right. Did he just walk out, or did he actually leave?
I think
So you left.
Oh.
Took his coat with him.
I can assure you he probably wouldn't mind either way, but I'm not sure if both of us need to be on as an additional approval. If the mayor's not available, I would think that one of us would suffice.
I think an or would be
Yeah.
satisfactory.
I agree.
So one or the other.
Yeah, if you're out on vacation or.
Yeah, because like you said, that you need to talk to him tomorrow because you're not going to be Thursday.
Yep.
Well, in the case of, okay, something has to happen
Tomorrow.
before close of business on Thursday, and you're not available. Well, maybe director of administration signs off on it, but I can't go through it because it's an and formulated versus an or formulated. So I think having the or is sufficient in that regard. Because then there's so much more of a burdensome and getting back to being cumbersome to execute.
Does an email response count as written permission? Here.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm used to it.
Response from.
Yeah, I'm used to it being the case, but I just want to put it here.
Yeah, and other, I mean, even just for this program in itself, when the department head asks for a new card, Tom, the accounting supervisor, will essentially say, okay, I can get the card after I get the mayor Danielle's approval, and we both say yes or no in an email, and then he'll go and
Okay. Yeah.
do it.
So that also helps because you got more options there.
Correct. And to be fair, Kelly and I check our emails constantly on our phones, where some others don't. So
Correct. So you're pretty much covered.
yeah.
I mean, with only 21 card holders, it sounds like this shouldn't. I don't know why I want to say that.
Yes.
I mean, it's
You're
outside.
right. Yep.
But at the same time, if you don't get confirmed or conforming usage now, at this level, it won't get any better by itself. They have to understand, these are the program rules, this is what it's for, this is what it's not for, and, go accordingly.
Same idea applies to number 9. I get the 3 occurrences, but the way that's worded there is kind of like an open invitation that, you can have 3 missing things and you're okay. So I would reword that. I'd leave the first sentence the way it is, and then I'd say full compliance is expected.
And just
And may
continue
result.
to allow
And
me
may
to
result.
make that decision.
And then-
Well, and may
And
result in the.
And delete the next 2 sentences and just say after 3 occurrences, your card's revoked. For 6 months, no matter when.
Exactly.
No fiscal year thing.
Maybe if it's not the department head, maybe make.
And if it happens
mention
again,
it to him
it's
one
for a
time and
year.
say, we're just not gonna babysit this over and over.
Yeah, not only that, but it's a pain in the neck.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
And
I
why
don't
would,
have
why
the
would
time.
department head be signing off and sending that in, knowing that it's in violation?
Yeah.
That's John's comment.
Yep.
They're supposed, right? If
Right.
they've got 4 people in the department, this is the way the program works. If you don't get it,
Don't get a card.
you don't get a card. Or you won't have a card any longer.
Yeah, right.
And typically, what I've seen is that would be on from a performance standpoint, like your review standpoint, right? So this is your goals. This is what is expected of you, right? And then if you're not meeting that, that has financial or other implications for the following year, or during that year.
That's just sloppy.
Yeah.
Correct, except we haven't had a performance
correct.
issue
Yes,
implemented since 10 years ago.
Right.
So,
Which then this is a side effect of that, right?
That's a
correct.
personnel committee problem.
Yeah, that feeds into this, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And
So-
you might want to have a conversation with US Bank and their card program. They might give you some good advice on kind of parameters on this, because these are no different issues than any other e-card users. And they might say, well, this is the, absent an absolute whatever, this is something you may want to consider, or look at it, whatever. I mean, I think you're gonna find it's gonna be one or two, 10%, 21 cards, one or two users, either gonna comply or we're
So did I hear that, number one, not go with option 1 or 2, but kind of just reword the number 9 to say required receipts, documentation provided for each purchase with monthly statements, full compliance expected after 3 occurrences. Purchasing card will be revoked for a period of 6 months.
Yep.
For clarification on number 6, are you eliminating the mayor, or are you going to
Number 6, it's still going to read, the following purchases are never permitted except with written permission by the mayor or by the director of administration and or director of finance treasurer if the mayor is not available. Okay. Are you guys okay with adding N and O on the back page of the resolution? These were just 2 items that I had seen in a couple. I did a lot of research on other municipalities in the area. We've had an issue with 1099 vendors. So our accounts payable clerk has been very actively going through our vendor list, emailing, trying to get 1099 W-9s from all vendors, and making sure that we now implemented a procedure, I should say, where nobody but the accounts payable clerk can enter new vendors, so that we make sure that we get a 1099 on file prior. BSNA allows you to put in what's called miscellaneous, so any department head can go in, enter the invoice. If the vendor wasn't in the system, they could just hit miscellaneous, and the accounts payable clerk would never know if we have a W-9 or not on file. So to eliminate that completely, we just said no new vendors come from anybody else but the accounts payable clerk. You have to notify her through email first. She will either you provide the 1099. If you can't, she will reach out and provide it. And then once you get the okay, then you can enter the invoice. So we've been eliminating that. And then any of the vendors that are marked miscellaneous from previous administration and previous employees, she's going through those and now making sure that we have W-9. So ensuring that we have those on here.
So just to clarify though, the AP clerk can enter a vendor and enter an invoice to be paid against the vendor?
She enters the new vendor information, collects the W-9, and then tells the employee that they can now enter the invoice in the system.
goes back to
Under the
department.
vendor code, yeah.
Okay.
So she
I was
doesn't
asking
do it.
from a segregation of duty.
Yeah, no.
On someone that can enter a vendor and enter an invoice.
Yeah, no, they typically will just send a copy of the invoice, here's the information, and or the W-9, she'll enter it, and then
And then you have a single control point for the vendor.
the department will enter them, and the department head it goes through the normal approval process.
Alright.
Okay, and then I think the last one on this was number 8 and 9 on the end of the resolution. Again, the tax exempt portion. I added the all online purchases that are not exempt will require proof that the purchase savings are sufficient to make the expenditure. Again, I saw that in another municipality. You know, if it's a significant amount of savings and the sales tax is very minimal, I would rather them charge that on their credit card than go to a vendor and pay a substantially higher price for the product. So I wanted to allow that flexibility in there.
Yeah, kind of net.
And then number 9, adding that one. Any returns or credits made on purchases using the card must be credited to the account holder's account. No cash refunds. The holder must obtain and retain all appropriate credit documentation. I haven't had any issues with this, but again, just saw it on another one and thought it might be good to implement that in here.
That's usually pretty standard for a retailer. They'll issue it back to the source. But you also may want to check with US Bank. They may be able to turn a toggle on and off.
Yes.
Require it.
Yeah. Because some places will do, you put it back to the original source, or you can get like a store credit.
And that was what I was trying to avoid.
Yeah.
the last recommendation, I'm sorry, number 4 would be on the bottom. Cardholders should immediately notify the Director of Finance and Treasurer of any transactions they do not recognize. The issue that I've had with that, and I just wanted to add a piece to this, was after I created this packet, I remember that I get a lot of notification from department heads, whether it's, oh, I didn't recognize this purchase, oh, my card got hacked or whatever, and it's almost like they expect me to then take care of it for them. Well, US Bank doesn't allow that. The cardholder has to do that. So I think just to add something in here that I had found on another one, which it just says, if the cardholder detects or suspects any fraudulent activity, they should contact, and in this case, it's a different, but I would just put US Bank immediately at this phone number and then notify I would change it to Director of Finance as soon as possible.
Yep.
So that they know they have this, they know the number to call, they don't have to, notify me after the fact.
Yep.
Do you want it in writing?
Usually they do send me an email. I have had a couple
I
come
just
in,
didn't know
but
if you wanted that.
and I could just throw that, in writing, notify in writing as soon as possible. But I wanted to add that piece to number 4.
That's good. You need a motion on this?
With all of these changes that are completely different than the ones on here.
You want to bring it back? I don't know, it's up to you. How you want to move on, whatever. But
I'm fine with stating that, motion to recommend to council the changes as discussed.
Motion?
Second that.
Yeah, I'll second.
we have a motion and a second on the proposed changes for the purchasing card program. Anybody want those read? You have them all?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't say if anybody want them reread or whatever, but if they're all okay with it, I think we spent enough time on it.
And I have no problem sending a copy, but just like the updated
Okay.
resolution after the
Next
fact.
time around.
Yeah.
or next week. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Danielle will work on those changes, and then you will forward that to the common council. All right, moving on. Treasury office.
Okay. I'm going to give a brief overview as this is something that just happened in the last couple of weeks. I will take any recommended changes that you may have or just discussion, and then I will have further plans at the next common council meeting. So a few short weeks ago, our deputy treasurer, who has been the deputy treasurer since she started 20 plus years ago, Roseanne, is retiring. Her last day is June 28th. With that, there have been some discussions on what the future of the finance and treasury department looks like, how we can make better use of the procedures and all of the duties that are going on in both departments now, and what the future looks like. So I had some discussion with both the treasury department and the finance department on possible changes to the structure of the department. I think that there's been a disconnect between the accounting supervisor in the finance department and the deputy treasurer in the treasury department, and further moving forward to hopefully mend some of that, get the duties to where they need to be, and potentially moving forward with making one management position in the next 12 to 18 months instead of having 2 management positions and a director position. There isn't many other departments that I know of that have that type of hefty management roles in their department. And I have a meeting with the auditors on Thursday for further discussion with them on possible restructuring of the department, what it would look like from a segregation of duty standpoint to merge the accounting supervisor and deputy treasurer role together. I have a very, very competent accountant who is the AP clerk. And her role has it was a brand new role as it was mended between the previous staff accountant, AP. There was a full-time and a part-time position prior to my arrival. She started in March, I started in June. And so that dropped us down 0.5 FTEs, and we merged that one position and gave her a lot of duties, which she has taken on tremendously well. She's very knowledgeable. the future for myself looks like having her transition into a interim deputy treasurer role so that she can learn some of the treasury side of things. From the finance side, the accounting supervisor has trained her on a lot of his duties with the anticipation of her potentially moving into his position and or just picking her up to speed to get some of those duties off of him that he has acquired in the transition as well. So I'm not really sure. Like I said, it looks like it's going to be a possible 12 to 18 month restructuring, but trying to get something in place for the meantime, because with her leaving, that leaves the July property tax installment due to the county, that leaves August settlements, that leaves tax preparation, and leaving that position open and not refilling it for some potential restructuring of the department means I've got to get her up to speed to a point that she's comfortable in providing help to me during those tax times. So with that being
So you're
said,
talking about combining some treasury functions with the function?
correct.
That's not a good idea.
You don't think so?
Separate.
Okay.
You never want the disbursement side accounting.
Understood, and those are some things that we talked through, and how we would, again, restructure some of the
Good
duties
idea.
in the finance department. I was looking at potentially making Cheryl, who's been the payroll clerk, and she's been part-time for 25 years. Her duties have increased. And so instead of hiring a new deputy treasurer, we talked about merging the two management positions and offering Cheryl full-time and picking up some of those segregation of duties pieces that the accountant is doing now. For example, Cheryl used to do accounts payable. She then took away that piece and added ambulance billing, some other miscellaneous receivables. There's obviously enough going on that she absolutely could work 40 hours a week, especially if the accountant is going to become the interim deputy treasurer. That being said, some of the reconciliation pieces I think are going to fall on myself from the treasury standpoint, and Tom and I are going to work together on really getting that piece coordinated with the auditors so that we can get that piece under control. And so if Sarah, Tom, and I are all working on that together, I think that that will be a really cohesive process, and we can put some sort of policy and procedure in place for that. With that, would have to separate the accounts payable portion and the reconciliation portion from the deputy treasurer, which we thought, because Cheryl has done it for many years in the past, if she would take on that piece. Now, there's just some of these duties that are going on right now between some of the people that have already either done it, are doing it, can easily learn it, that may need to switch. I think job descriptions are probably going to change if this is the way that we want to move forward. But that is obviously a piece of how we can keep all that separate so that the person cutting the check is also not signing the check or not reconciling the bank statement. And
Right.
so just how all that's going to work, obviously that is a process we've considered moving forward, and that would take time, but I wanted obviously the auditor's recommendation. There's many municipalities, I don't know about our size, but that don't have the staffing, that segregation of duties can be somewhat limited, and they're still okay. And I don't want to come to that point, but I would like to somehow minimize the management overhead in the department and allow for everybody to still do their duties, do them well, and not have any issues. So.
There was concern about that same same responsibilities when Paul kind of assumed both roles, took over the treasury director function.
Well, correct, because it was combined into one position.
And prior to that, it was always segregated, and I think that, exactly the way you laid it. But I think as we move forward with technology and some of the so on and so forth, if properly done, but my caution to you, you got to have CLA on board, because that's not there. It's a no-go
Oh, absolutely,
Or, I
which
mean,
is
I
why
think-
I wanted to, bring this forward with some potential recommendation. Obviously, I wanted to, like I said, a recommendation to come back. I want to see how much it's going to actually save us, at least from the personnel side. I want to have those discussions with CLA, come back. Nothing that I want set in stone now, but come back at the June meeting after I've had those conversations, had some further discussion with the department, had Sarah move into the interim deputy treasurer role and see how she's doing with that, and seeing how she's a very innovative multitasker that I can see easily jumping into this position and eliminating a lot of redundancy and possibly eliminating a lot of extra steps and procedures that are going on right now. And I don't know that until I have her jump into it. And so I think having her train over the next 4 weeks over there will really be able to provide me some insight to come back in June, these next few meetings, and let you guys know how that transition is going, and most importantly, what the auditors say and what the financial cost savings looks like.
So you're gonna lose one full-time in June and then another one anticipated in 6. That'd be
Correct.
Can't change. Asking for one.
I've tried. He's been counting down since I started.
I bet.
2 years, 27 days, and 4 hours. All in good fun. But yes, the most I've convinced him possibly is instead of September 26th, maybe January 27th. But I think there's no more after that.
So procurement, cut it like grade POs, that contracting, where is that? What department is it in?
That's a good question. We don't have a procurement. We don't have a. Oh, I should say, we don't have a payment policy. Those are all things that I think have been brought forward in the past that didn't really go anywhere. Definitely on the, it's added to my list. I've got a folder of many other financial policies at other municipalities and the ones that we don't have and how we can move forward in implementing them, as well as what has been brought forward in the past. The only procurement policy that we have is revolves around grant funding, federal grant funding, and that was brought forward right after COVID. So that's the only thing that we have in place. We do push departments to create purchase orders. Any contract that we have, I've done an internal procedure that any contract that goes to council needs a purchase order. I've noticed that a lot of them haven't, and we ran into a really big issue in the water and sewer department where I think this may have been some session council, but just potential misuse of funds, and because there was no purchase order in place. And so I've really made sure, and Sarah, my right-hand man, she is assertive and she will not let anything go through if there's not a purchase order. If you are over budget by $1, she's asking why. She's asking if a budget amendment is needed. So we've, like I said, implemented that internally to make sure that if there's a contract, there's a purchase order included with it. We are not sending out invoices until we have change orders, and those have to be approved. Those are the types of implementation items that we have in place now, but there's nothing policy related.
I'm just wondering from as you think through the FT kind of situation, usually I'll say a procurement manager is in charge of that. Usually you get back a lot of what you pay them for because they know how to negotiate, they know how to get things set up, they know how to get things so that you have consistency where purchases are, instead of people going out and buying 17 different things, you get them over longer term contracts and everything like that. I do think that's something to
So losing the one FTE obviously would, if we allowed Cheryl to move from 3/4 time to full time, and she picks up some of Sarah's duties now in the training period. Like I said, Sarah's position in 2023 was kind of a blended position that had no real job description that was ever even approved through personnel. And that's something that I'm meeting with the team next week to go over and update all of our job description. Because Sarah essentially just created hers herself based on the tasks that she has, started doing since she started the position. So not to say that if the management roles combined to some sort of one deputy treasurer / accounting supervisor position, that her role as the accountant couldn't include, take away some of the duties that she would be doing now and giving them to Cheryl, and adding some sort of procurement piece to the job description.
Then you get more consistency around contract. A lot of stuff that comes with it. Contracts look a lot. I'm not going to say standardized, but your protections, discounting, and all like I said, you get it much more.
Great.
Well, that is an area, sometimes with the state project, whatever, billing, sometimes we're not seeing stuff till 2 years later or whatever. It's like, well, how does that stuff happen if there's not a central or a go-to person in terms of contract management, if you will? Say, well, the road's been done for whatever, I've seen it, whatever, here's the agreed upon pricing or whatever, but
To piggyback off of that, just as an example that just happened, because something like that is not in place, the auditors are doing their testing, and they come across an invoice that was paid in, I want to say like April, maybe, of 2025, for a project in the water department that has been completed since August. It kind of falls down on, okay, so who was not paying attention to that project and making sure that those final invoices come in, and there were substantial amounts. Now the auditors determined that we're just gonna, put it on the financial statements of 2025, but those are the pieces that could potentially be caught sooner.
Yep.
And just adding, like I said, there was some things that I think we talked about maybe even last year or the year before when I first started, bringing in all of the miscellaneous receivables into the finance department instead of having each individual department invoicing themselves. And then when it comes to tax time, it's trying to collect all that data of things that are invoiced that haven't been paid and trying to get them on tax bills or trying to send them to collections because it's not a special charge. We've really honed in on almost all departments are now going through the finance department for invoicing. So, me too.
Yeah.
Adds a little bit of extra work, but I think it's really saved us in a lot of other areas.
Definitely.
so we'll expect to hear and talk and discuss more about this going forward.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about 24 financial results. Keep moving here. It looks like, Danielle, you've got a pre-packet of some preliminary numbers for 24?
Correct. So I still don't have the journal entries from the auditors yet, so this is the preliminary. There's not a lot of changes coming forward. The only changes that I know of will be a little bit of some balance sheet journal entries and some potential entries to the TIDS on the way that the invoicing fell for the shortfalls. It looks like we have received more revenue than we have, just based on some of them will be inflows for the next year. I don't know if I need to go through every single one unless you guys have questions. I did make a couple notes and I'll point those out and then I'll just answer any questions that you guys have. Page 2, this is the revenues and expenditures for all of our funds, all of our governmental funds. We had a $1.5 million surplus in the general fund. A lot of that attributed to the $2.5 million contingency that we put in there for the expenditure restraint program that doesn't get used. Debt service, we had a $300,000 deficit that was anticipated. We were spending down some of the debt service fund to keep the levy flat. However, there is an increase in the levy in 2025 to help pick up some of the principal and interest on the 2023 and 2024 bonds that we took out. TIF districts, that shows a $3 million surplus. Again, that's going to change slightly due to the minimum assessment guarantees. but the TID 8 increment came in a lot higher than what was projected. The development fund, you'll see the $2 million-ish deficit. That was drawdowns from the park impact fees and also the large drawdown for the water tower. Non-governmental funds, we can talk about those, the $4.5 million deficit. Those are on another page. That's mostly capital.
When is the water tower completion expected? Seems like not much has happened there.
Aaron might know more.
They-
Board of Waters.
They've painted it. They plan to be putting it up, I think, in June. Really? They were waiting for the weather. Can't paint in the concert room.
I thought not long ago the expected was like fall 2025 or early 2026 is when it was going to be completely up and running.
Complete? That I don't recall.
Come online. That's
So overall, $59 million fund balance. I did just have a couple notes on page 7, which is the expense side. Actually, we can go back to the general fund. We'll go to page 5. Overall, taxes came in slightly under, but I think that's a journal entry coming from the auditors as well to true up the tax roll. Licenses, fees, and permits came in slightly under. Building fees came in relatively under, and I think there was a few larger projects that we anticipated were going to come online in 25 or in 24 that we know are going to come online in 25. That's why you'll see the lower amount of building permits, and then also the impact fees weren't as high because those larger developments didn't come online. Page 6. All of our public charges for services, we had a almost $150,000 increase in ambulance revenue, which you'll see an even larger increase in 2025 since we raised the fees. And then miscellaneous, or investment earnings, almost $200,000 above what was budgeted, and then miscellaneous is relatively flat. So total revenues was $31 million. And then on the expense side, you can see by the variance on page 7, most departments were very reasonable within their budget. Won't have many true-ups to the budget at the next finance committee meeting for the final budget to actual budget amendment. But you can see the auditing services, those increased due to the significant amount of time it took for the reconciliation project. And then also public safety, fire personnel, there was a large increase in OT. However, we have had some conversations that seem like they may be going forward that should minimize the amount of OT coming forward. I had some meetings with the fire department. It looks like there may be some opioid funding from the county that we're going to be receiving that will potentially allocate some of that overtime off of the general fund and move it to the funding that we're going to be receiving from the county.
and the fire you said was mainly OT.
Yes. Almost all of it was. Page 8, you can see there really wasn't any variances. Every department remained within budget on page 8. And so that would be the final preliminary general fund expenditures, $30,035,000. On page 9 is just the debt service. That's self-explanatory: taxes, investment coming in, debt service going out. The TIDs I talked about. There wasn't much activity in any of the TIDs from a capital or expenditure side. We did have a final payoff of the transmission lines in TID 8, which is that large expenditure, that $700,000. But other than that, it's been mostly admin. Almost all of it is just admin, and then TID 7 is the MRO payment, $860,000. Transfers in and out are typically right from the capital fund to the debt service fund to cover the debt service. You just combine them for report purposes. The Special Revenues Fund, page 15. This is the revenues and expenditures for all of our non-governmental funds. Tax levy went to the library, and the street improvement fund says taxes, but really the tourism is just the allocated portion of room tax. That has substantially increased, so the way we allocate funding has changed. We used to essentially collect all the room tax, keep it in the general fund, and then whenever we received the statute amount that we are allocated, then we would transfer room tax money over to the room tax fund. However, to us receiving well above our statutory limit, we changed it to a 70-30 split. So every quarter essentially is when we receive room tax. Every quarter, the general fund keeps 30%. We transfer 70% over to room tax because they have an obligation with Engage Franklin. And in order for Engage Franklin to do their duties and pay the naming rights, stadium invoice, they needed just a little bit more consistent revenue sources and understanding of when they were going to be receiving money. So we changed the way that that's flowing now. We did see an increase in the amount of revenue that we received for the solid waste fund. We did increase the solid waste, garbage, and recycling charges on the tax bill in 2024. We implemented a $20 increase. And due to the large overage, I will say, of $164,000, but we knew that the way that things were progressing in the amount of new development, we were able to keep the solid waste fee flat for 2025. So you'll see that surplus there. We typically keep that fund balance healthy at roughly $400,000 to $500,000 is sufficient for a potential change if there ever is one in the garbage and recycling, and we need to start with a new company. We'd like to have some sort of available.
But we're in the 5-year deal
With John's, yeah. And we have a great relationship with them. I don't see any changes, but like to keep something.
Well, it'd be nice to have that fee just even for the citizens to stay flat for 3.
And it was flat for, I want to say, 3 or 4 years. Maybe. I think it only increased $5 over the last 5 years, and we did have that $20 increase, but flat this year again. Page 16 is the capital funds. Capital outlay, public charges, $1.1 million. The street improvement fund had, like I said, a portion of the tax levy, almost $300,000. And then the intergovernmental revenue is the transportation aid. We do keep most of the transportation aid in the street improvement fund, with a portion of it going to the general fund. We typically don't allocate any more than 20%, but it's been pretty consistent at roughly 15 to 17 is what we allocate over. The development fund, like I said, you'll see the development fund is the impact fee fund. So it's more on a further page, but the impact fees weren't as high as we budgeted, but we transferred a lot out, the park impact fees, and roughly almost $3 million in water impact fees for the tower. Page 19 through 25 are just each fund broken down by revenue expenses. I don't think there's anything glaring that I saw. The library relatively kept their budget flat, except for, they anticipated around $100,000 deficit, spend down some of their fund balance, which is normal for them. They're trying to keep $100,000 in their fund balance, I think, for policy. I know this has been a discussion before, so we don't need to beat a dead horse, but St. Martin's Fair came in a little bit under, so they have a deficit of $95,000. Myself, Kelly, and the mayor all met with the St. Martin's Fair committee a couple of weeks ago and gave some recommendations, and it seems that both the civic celebrations of St. Martin's Fair personnel services should be rapidly declining for 2025, so I anticipate seeing some sort of change there.
May I ask, do both parties know that they are responsible now for covering this interview? Was that made clear?
So for St. Martin's Fair, yes, and actually they were the ones that brought it up, how, that used to never be and now it is, and the mayor expressed how he's going to meet with the department heads of DPW, fire, and police about decreasing. I did not attend, and I don't know if they attended this last civic celebration meeting.
They did not.
Okay, so then when's the next one? Okay, then I will try and make it a point to make sure that we're on that agenda too, because I think that one is significantly important. So I will make sure that
That'll be the last meeting before the actual
Okay.
civic celebrations.
Is that tourism and room tax? Is there any possibility there? Other funding sources they're tackling in another way?
the only source that we have for room tax and tourism is just the room tax money coming in, the 8%. They get 70% of whatever's collected. I'm not sure what other revenue source we could receive other than the minimal investment earnings that they get.
And I know Civic was going to the tourism for part of one of the items, I can't remember which one, but because of the fact that that ends up with people staying here.
Generating that maybe tourism could support
support some of the
funding some of that.
Yeah, so I think they were going to last. Some others came with it.
That would have been last Wednesday. I think it's always the third Wednesday. I'll have to talk to the economic development director, John, and see how that went. Didn't notice any significant variances that I would see as alarming in any of the capital funds. We have some large encumbrances for projects that are ongoing. We have enough funding to cover the projects that we have. We're not taking out any debt in 2025. We plan on spending down some of the general fund to cover some capital improvement costs. But other than that, I don't have anything further that I felt was absolutely glaring that needed to be discussed on the financials at this point, as they are preliminary, and I would be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Page 3, I know you mentioned the TIF investments. Just FYI. But you said there were still.
Yeah, but they still should be matching right now. All of them
That's
should
kinda
be.
what I thought.
Yep.
I think that's the only balance.
That could just be a calculation issue, but I will.
All right, so there's going to be more obviously on this as we move forward and CLE gets close to their reporting dates, right? Or we can
Yes.
wrapping it up.
They were here today. Their final day here is Thursday. And then we should be able to move forward with them just finalizing and doing all the final review steps on their end to have the report done by June 30th. Seems like talking to them, there was absolutely no issue with that.
All right, that's good to
Yeah.
hear. Anything else on this? Otherwise, we will hear more next time, I'm sure. And they're gonna, I presume they'll do a video conference. They'll wanna
Yep.
show some.
At the July meeting that was anticipated, like they do.
Okay, so let's target it for July.
Yep.
All right, then let's move on to the 24 impact fee.
Okay. I apologize, this went to Common Council already, but I still wanted to provide an update to the Finance Committee members that are not on the council. Just some key highlights. The impact fee collection slowed down in Q3, Q4. Like I stated, that was due to some bigger developments that we anticipated coming online that just haven't or have moved slower than anticipated. We did refund Seasons at Franklin, roughly $130,000 at the beginning of January 24. For those of you that weren't here, that was due to the Seasons at Franklin was charged 2023 impact fees on their development, even though they had approval from the previous building inspector that if they provided all of their permits and everything by June 1st of 22, they would implement, I believe it was the 21 rates. And when they finally, it's something along those lines. However, once they got through to 2023, that previous building inspector was no longer here, was not carried forward to the new building inspector, so they were just charged the 23 rates. We had all the backup documentation saying that they provided all of their documentation on their end in time. So the approval to refund them the difference of the impact fees is why there was that significant fund. We are moving with the park impact fees. We are into 2026, maybe even into 2027 with some of these larger DOT pathway projects. Before potential rebating. Water impact fees, I don't see any significant issues there now that we anticipated using 51% funding towards the water tower. That is a $9 million project. So just as those invoices come in, I typically allocate 51% and do that transfer. Sewer impact fees, we haven't seen any movement in the transfer of project costs to support the sanitary sewer impact fees. That has been a discussion on what that absolutely can be used on, because a lot of what ties into that is the Ryan Creek Interceptor in that southwest portion. So a few of us here at City Hall met with Rupert Milkey, who has done, I believe, all of our impact fee studies. And we have a contract waiting for review to move forward with impact fee review in 2025. We budgeted for all of the impact fees to be reviewed except water and sewer because they were already done in 2024. But however, this specific piece of the usage and potential rebate wasn't brought up at that point. So Rupert Milkey is looking into that for us. And then looking at an overview of all the impact fees and if any of those need to change. Library impact fees, those are just coming in. There was some discussion about possibly using some library impact fees for a new chiller. However, after further recommendation from Rupert Milkey, it seemed that that may not. It's really on the fence of if it's an eligible expense or not, and so due to it being in the JCI project, we moved forward with not using impact fees to support that purpose. But library impact fees, law enforcement impact fees, fire impact fees, and transportation impact fees all essentially are just we're collecting them and continuing to pay down the debt service for the buildings. And for transportation, it's at Drexel and Oak improvements. So overall, you can see those are the fund balances there that are left. Like I said, we anticipate no rebating concerns at this time. I apologize, I did not create this document. So the project planning in 2026, the comprehensive review is actually in 2025. We budgeted it in 2025 and we've already met and are moving forward with having Rupert Milky review them in 2025. And then this quick FAQ was created by Kelly, so I appreciate her doing that for us. So if you guys had any questions on the document, those are your answers, unless you have any more. This is just a informational only.
You said Drexel is targeted for reconstruction in 25?
No, Drexel has already been reconstructed years ago, and we're just paying down the debt service from.
Well, that's over here. I'm talking about,
East.
yeah,
Oh,
35th
I'm not
to
sure.
76th.
Yes,
It's on a list for.
it is.
This year?
You got approved at council, or at least.
Is that on the street improvement program?
Yeah.
It's one of the roads that were,
It's-
okay.
It's between 60, was it 60?
61st and,
Yeah, well, it's
64th.
60th and somewhere else, but the 51st
Roundabout.
It'll skip
roundabout
it.
is
Yeah, it'll skip
is
it.
not
Right,
part of the.
correct.
So maybe.
So that's part of the-
And then it goes down to a little bit before 35th
Yeah, because that would have been what they
subdivision.
did.
I can't remember the name of it, but
I think that starts the.
Whatever they can do to make Mira and my life more difficult on 51st.
Keep going.
Keep going.
like you going down Drexel.
Keep going.
They like to tear up all the streets in the same place.
Right.
Well, they're all done. It's one time.
Elm Road has been a contentious issue in TID 8, and that's been some further discussion. So Rupert Milky is not only working with the city on corporate park and TID 8 projects and
That
moving
might,
some of those
that might
forward.
need some attention in the immediate future with other things across
That
the street
western
from us
leg.
happening.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we've had some extensive conversations on that. But then the piece of using some of the transportation impact fees to help offset the $7+ million Elm Road project would be helpful. So.
All right, well, thank you for that update. Any other questions, comments? I know we've talked about some of these. It's nice to see some of this stuff, what's the right word? Getting traction, maybe? Getting done, moving along, whatever the proper terminology is.
Progress.
Yes,
Coming to
exactly.
fruition.
Progress.
There you go.
Yeah. Next meeting date is June 24th. There's some other items that you have on there, Danielle. Do you want to talk about any of those specifically? or-
Just 2 seconds. The annual TID report, that report is due to the Department of Revenue July 1st, so I will be bringing that back at the next meeting with those updates prior to submitting the actual reports. The other 2 items on there, they're important. They're on the list of policy updates. The one that I wanted to add, letter E, comes from the mayor. This is an initial conversation on the budget process and timeline. We're starting budget in the next couple of weeks, and then also communicate any potential concerns that we see moving forward into the budget process. I anticipate he is going to be talking to the council and ask all council members to be at this meeting. That was just a conversation we had earlier, and promote anybody that wants to come in and address any concerns, raise any concerns that we can start looking at now in June prior to last minute. Q1 financials I wanted to add, and then for letter F and then letter G, I just wrote down ACH policy. Again, I like to keep the items on here so that I can mark them off and accountable. So, if you guys have any extra ones you can think of, if you want to see, let me know.
How's the communications been with U.S. Bank as the investment advisor for the OPEB trust?
Which
Our OPEB. I don't talk to them probably as often as I should, to be honest. It hasn't been top priority.
Okay.
Um,
But you're getting communications or
Oh, yes,
performance updates?
correct.
or-
Yep, no, I get those. I get quarterly updates from Brian at Princeville for the defined contribution plan. I do get quarterly updates from US Bank.
I don't know about the council members periodically. I think they should be wanting to at least get a quick overview of that probably. Until they kind of came through here. It's a little different now with an outside manager, but still probably something that's.
Like-
So that's why anything else?
Okay.
Hearing none, I think we can take a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn in a second. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
That motion is approved. Well, thank you all.